Some stories begin with loss, but this one begins with a receipt, and the price of silence itself. I thought peace meant calm, until I found out it had a cost. A cost written in my daughter's name. I'm Margaret Hale, and this morning, I discovered that even love can be bought. But if peace has a buyer, then today I intend to find the seller, and trust me, this is only the beginning. My name is Margaret Hale, and what you're about to hear are the echoes of a life divided between love, loss, and truth. If my story touched you, stay close. Subscribe and walk with me through every chapter. When peace carries a receipt, it stops being peace. That thought didn't come from philosophy or prayer. It came from a single line of text I wasn't supposed to see, one that tore through the quiet like glass underfoot. It was early, the kind of morning that pretends to be gentle. The light was thin, sliding through the curtains in streaks of silver, touching the dust that danced above the kitchen table. The kettle had cooled. The house, still heavy with the smell of yesterday's rain, felt asleep, or perhaps pretending to be. Claire's phone was lying there, unlocked. Its glow pulsed faintly, a heart I didn't recognize. I hadn't meant to look, but something in me did. Maybe intuition, that old ache that mothers never really lose. Maybe fear. I saw Daniel's name first, then the message. Thank you, Claire. This will make things easier for all of us. Below it, a transaction marked, "For keeping the peace." The words didn't shout, they whispered. They slid beneath my skin, patient and poisonous. I read them again and again, as if repetition might change their meaning. But the meaning stayed, solid and cruel. I sat there, staring at that phrase until my breath slowed. The ticking clock in the hallway marked the seconds, Robert's clock. He used to wind it every Sunday before church, a small ritual of order before a week of chaos. After he died, I kept winding it, out of habit maybe, or rebellion. Because if time was still moving, maybe I was too. Now that same clock sounded like an accusation. Every second said, "You didn't see this coming." The quiet of the house deepened, the kind that doesn't comfort, the kind that listens. The refrigerator hummed, the curtains swayed, and I felt the old wooden floor breathing beneath my feet. It was as if the house knew something before I did. I tried to swallow the question rising in me, but it refused. It formed behind my teeth like a storm. Why would she take it? Why would Daniel offer it? The kettle clicked suddenly, the sound of its metal cooling, sharp and final. I poured water into a cup anyway, though I didn't want tea. The gesture was mechanical, the way grief often is. My hands moved because stillness would have been too revealing. When I heard the front door, I didn't move. Claire's footsteps were light, familiar, careful, the same rhythm she had when sneaking home past curfew as a teenager. She greeted me softly, pretending everything was ordinary. Her voice carried a tremor she thought I wouldn't hear. Mothers always hear it. She smelled like jasmine shampoo and rain. That scent always softened me. But not this morning. I looked at her, and for a moment, I saw her at 5 years old, running barefoot across the kitchen tiles, asking if peace meant everyone being quiet. I told her back then that peace meant honesty. She'd nodded, not understanding, and laughed like truth was something too big to hold. Now she stood before me, grown, beautiful, trembling, and I finally understood the cost of that laugh. I picked up her phone and held it out. "Is this," I asked, my voice steadier than I felt, "the price of my name?" For a moment she didn't breathe. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. The color drained from her face until only her eyes remained. Those eyes that once searched mine for stories before bedtime, now darting for escape. "Mom," she began, but I raised a hand. The silence between us thickened, filled with years of things we'd never said. The clock kept ticking, the wind pressed against the window, and somewhere inside the walls, a pipe groaned, the sound of something giving way. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. My calm frightened even me. Because beneath it, something was cracking open, a truth I'd avoided for too long, that even love can be bought if someone names the right price. She tried to explain, her voice low, broken. But I wasn't ready to listen. Not yet. I needed to hold the silence the way one holds a wound, tightly, until it stops bleeding. I turned toward the window, watching the pale light crawl across the floor. "Peace," I whispered. "Shouldn't have a buyer." Claire said nothing. Her breath trembled behind me, uncertain, ashamed, and in that stillness, I knew this story wasn't just about money. It was about inheritance, not of wealth, but of silence, of what we pass down when we confuse calm with truth. That morning, I made a quiet promise. I would uncover what peace had cost us, and who had decided it was worth paying for. She didn't answer at once. Shame takes time to find a voice, and when it finally speaks, it trembles. Claire stood near the window, her back half turned to me, her silhouette framed by the thin light that crept through the lace curtains. Her fingers played with the fabric, restless, almost childlike, as if she could stitch her courage into its threads. The air smelled faintly of jasmine and old wood, the scent of our home when it holds its breath. "I wanted peace," she said at last, so quietly I almost missed it. "I didn't want this to grow any uglier than it already was." The word peace landed in the room like a stone dropped into still water, soft, but impossible to ignore. I studied her, the way her shoulders slumped inward, the way she avoided my eyes. She was wearing one of my old sweaters, the gray one I used to wear during Robert's hospital months. I had mended its cuff twice, and now the same loose thread brushed against her wrist. That sight, something I had repaired, hanging on her as she unraveled before me, made my chest tighten. "Peace," I repeated slowly. "Or quiet?" She looked down, eyes fixed on her hands. "You don't understand, Mom. Daniel was only trying to—" "To what?" I interrupted, my voice calm but edged. "To buy our silence? To call it love because it's wrapped in family?" Her lips parted, but the words refused to come. I watched the war inside her, loyalty clawing at guilt, fear tugging at affection. Then she exhaled, surrendering a fragile truth. "He said it was just gratitude. For keeping things calm. For not making things worse. He said I was helping everyone." Helping everyone. The words scratched at my ribs. I thought of the nights I had prayed for calm after Robert's death, how I mistook exhaustion for serenity, how I once silenced myself to keep the children from seeing how shattered I was. Peace, I had learned, is not the absence of conflict. It's the presence of truth. And truth has a voice, even when it whispers through tears. "Claire," I said softly, "calm is not peace. And peace bought with silence is just a prettier kind of war." She flinched, as if my tone burned her. Then, gathering what was left of her courage, she spoke again. "Daniel didn't ask me to lie. He just asked me not to speak against him. He said the family's tired and we need to heal. He said you'd understand eventually." I almost smiled, not from humor, but from the bitter irony of it. "Did he?" I asked. "He forgets that I've already lived through a life where silence dressed itself as healing." Her eyes lifted to mine, glistening. "He said it was for all of us. He said you were making things harder, and he wanted to protect you from yourself. Protect me from myself." The arrogance in that line was Daniel through and through, the same boy who, at 16, thought leadership meant controlling what others said. He was his father's son in logic, but not in heart. Robert could command a room and still listen to the smallest cry. Daniel commands silence and calls it respect. "What did he promise you?" I asked. She hesitated. "That once it's settled, he'll handle everything. The papers, the disputes, the calls. He said I wouldn't have to deal with the tension anymore, that I could rest. The way she said rest broke me a little. There was weariness in her voice that no daughter should carry. But tired souls make dangerous decisions. They mistake relief for redemption. I leaned back in my chair, the wood creaking beneath me. And the money? She winced. He insisted. He said it was symbolic. Symbolic, I repeated. Symbols have power, Claire. Even the smallest coin can turn a heart if you let it. She pressed her palms together. I didn't think it mattered that much. That's the trouble, I said. That's how rot begins, with a small thing we swear doesn't matter. Outside, the wind picked up, brushing branches against the glass like fingers testing for weakness. The sound filled the silence she couldn't bear. Her tears fell quietly, tracing down her cheeks like rain on fragile glass. I didn't want to hurt you, she said finally. I thought if I stayed neutral, everything would calm down. That maybe we could go back to how it used to be. I almost envied her innocence. There's no going back, Claire. There's only forward. And every path forward is built with what we choose to tell the truth about. Her lips trembled. I just wanted peace, Mom. I wanted to keep us together. And instead, I said, you sold the glue that held us. She looked up, startled. Do you remember, I continued, when you were 12 and your father gave you that small gold bracelet? You promised to never take it off because you said it made you feel brave. The day we buried him, you left it on his wrist instead. You said, he needs the courage now, not me. That was truth, Claire. You understood then that love means letting go of what's convenient to protect what's sacred. Her tears came freely now, unchecked, honest. I thought I was helping, she whispered. I know you did, I said gently. But peace that hides a lie isn't peace. It's debt. For a long while, neither of us spoke. The room filled with the fragile hum of the refrigerator, the ticking clock, the soft tremor of breath that comes when words are too heavy to move. Then, quietly, Claire said, he told me you wouldn't understand. That you'd make it about morality, that you'd see betrayal where there isn't one. I met her gaze, steady, unflinching. He was right about one thing. I do see morality, but that's not an accusation, Claire. It's a mirror. She looked away, her jaw tightening as though she could hold her guilt in place by force. I stood slowly, letting the chair legs drag against the wood floor, the sound low and deliberate. I moved toward the window, standing beside her. Together, we watched the daylight fade, the world outside dimming into soft blue. You think I don't know what it costs to love someone who disappoints you? I asked. I do. I lived with it, slept beside it, buried it in the ground. She turned to me, startled by the quiet ache in my tone. Peace, I whispered, isn't the same as surrender. And love that can be bought with silence is already dying. Claire covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking. I didn't reach for her yet. Grief, like guilt, has its own rhythm, and interrupting it too soon only teaches the heart to hide again. So I waited. I watched. The house listened with me. When she finally spoke, her voice was small. What do I do now? I looked down at her and said the only thing that felt true. You tell the truth, even if it costs you your comfort. She lowered her hands and stared at me, searching for softness, maybe forgiveness. I gave her neither, not yet, only space. Because I needed to understand, too, what Daniel had said, what Claire had agreed to, and what part of me, as a mother, had taught her that silence could ever be a form of love. Outside, the wind rattled the window again, and somewhere in that sound, I heard the faint echo of a promise breaking. And in that moment, I knew. I wasn't just fighting for my name. I was fighting for her soul. Night arrived, as if it had been waiting on the porch, patient and sure of itself. The house accepted it, Lamps hummed to life. Shadows lengthened in the corners like thoughts I hadn't finished thinking. Claire had gone to the guest room to lie down, claiming a headache. I knew better. Shame doesn't pound. It whispers, and it keeps you awake even when your eyes are closed. I rinsed 2 teacups in the sink that didn't need rinsing. The water ran hot over my hands until my skin pinked, until the sting convinced me I was still here, still in this kitchen where truth had been traded like currency. The old clock in the hallway kept time with a bureaucrat's patience. Every tick said, "You have work to do," so I began. I started with the table, cleared it, wiped the wood until the grain rose like a soft map under my palm. When a battlefield is domestic, you lay out your tools like a mother sets out school supplies. Neat stacks, measured breath, a prayer you don't say out loud. I brought a folder from the pantry, odd place, I know. But that's where I keep things I don't want to forget when the day feeds everyone else first. Receipts, call logs, notes in the margins where my handwriting sharpened with each disappointment, proofs as weapons, truth as a shield. I set them down and felt the strange relief of naming an enemy you can finally see. My phone pulsed with old messages. I scrolled slowly, resisting anger's rush. Daniel's words were clipped, organized, the way he writes when he thinks presentation wins the case. Let's be efficient. No need to escalate. It's handled. When a man says it's handled, he usually means he's rearranged the furniture and hopes you won't notice the missing wall. Claire's thread was softer. Can we just breathe? Let this go for now. I'm tired. Between those lines, the quiet debt of a woman who believes harmony is holy, even when it's purchased with silence. I love her for the tenderness that made her vulnerable. I hate that tenderness when it turns her into a hostage. The refrigerator clicked off. The silence that followed felt earned. I sat down and opened the banking app with hands that didn't shake. My body has learned new steadiness since Robert died. Grief taught my fingers how to hold a scalpel without fear. There it was, the transfer to Claire, 1 week old, not large, not small, just enough to be called kindness, without triggering a conscience. A memo line that belonged in a confession booth, not a ledger, for keeping the peace. I took a photo. I printed it. Paper has a way of pinning lies to the table. I marked the timestamps, cross-referenced the call logs, paused to breathe. The rhythm became a kind of prayer. Search, note, exhale. Search, note, exhale. My mind was a metronome. My heart, a drum I chose not to hear. Every so often, I stood and touched the window, just to feel the cold. Proof that the world still resisted the warm fog of wishful thinking. Somewhere upstairs, floorboards sighed under Claire's pacing. I could see her in my mind. Hands in her hair, the sweater's cuff catching on her bracelet bone, eyes hunting for a version of herself she liked better. I wanted to go to her. I didn't. Love sometimes waits in the next room with a light on, letting the dark make its case. Drawer by drawer, I inventoried my life. The junk drawer coughed up old batteries, a tape measure, a button from Robert's favorite jacket. I rolled the button in my palm, felt the grooves where his fingers had worried it during long phone calls with impossible people. He believed in fixing things. I used to think he could fix anything. Then he left, and I discovered the kind of repair that requires no tools, only will. I opened the bottom cabinet where the files live. Pull, kneel, flip. Paper rasped against paper like dry leaves. Legal letters, proposed settlements. Words arranged to look like bridges but built to be traps. I highlighted without mercy. Yellow for what was missing, blue for what was misnamed, red for what stank of strategy. If anyone had watched me, they might have called it obsessive. I called it breathing with my eyes open. And still, beneath the competence, there was a small tremor I refused to dignify with a name. Fear, perhaps, or the premonition that proof only matters to those willing to see it. I needed more than numbers. I needed context. Memory is a filing cabinet that only opens when you touch it the right way. I went to the hallway, to the little bench beneath the coat rack where we used to keep mittens and lost keys and letters no one had the strength to answer yet. Beneath the bench, a shallow drawer, my private archive, birthday cards, a church bulletin with a verse underlined by the Reverend's shaky hand, Robert's last grocery list, milk, bread, light bulbs, and the unspoken wish to outlive a weekend. At the very back lay a box no larger than a loaf of bread. Pale wood, varnish, worn smooth by years of being moved but never opened. The lid resisted, as if secrets stiffen with age. I lifted it, careful, and the air changed. Something old, something lavender. I recognized the scent, Claire's letter paper from middle school, the kind with faint pressed flowers that disappeared when you cried on them. On top, a photograph. Claire at 15, head thrown back, laughing at something I said off camera. Freedom, mid-bloom. I pressed the picture to my sternum until I could bear the present again. Beneath it, letters tied with blue ribbon. Notes she'd slipped under my door during teenage storms. Apologies written in lowercase. Promises in ink that hoped to be permanent. I set them aside gently, like bones that still know how to sing. At the bottom, a newer page. Not ribboned, not folded neatly, torn from a spiral. The handwriting was hers, but the lines had been pressed too hard, as if each word needed to puncture the page to be believed. I didn't read it, not yet. I placed it face down and returned to the table. Tea, sit, breathe. My hands were steady, my lungs were not. I thought of the choices that make or unmake a person, the ones with no audience, no applause, only the quiet stampede of your own heartbeat. Then I turned the page over. If I speak, I lose my brother. If I stay quiet, I lose my mother. The sound that left my mouth wasn't a sob. It was smaller and older, something my bones said before my lips could. I read the line again, and again. The war mapped in 13 words. The ledger that had replaced my daughter's heart. I wanted to argue with the paper, to tell it there was a third way. But truth does not invent exits just to keep us comfortable. It asks for the courage to walk the only door that opens clean. I set the note beside the printed transfer, the way a nurse lays a diagnosis next to a symptom and lets the light fall on both. Here was the geometry of our hurt. Money on one side, love on the other, and a girl standing between with her arms outstretched, asking which parent she must release to keep the other from drowning. A draft crept under the back door and found my ankles. I thought of beams going soft from moisture, of a house that looks whole until a hand on the banister takes it down. Silence is capillary. It finds its way into everything. I returned to my phone, to Claire's messages over the past month. I read the spaces between them, small hesitations, half-swallowed confessions. "I'll handle it," she wrote once, long after midnight. Handle what? A brother's fear? A mother's stubborn light? The lie that calls itself love and charges interest? I messaged no one. This investigation belonged to the kind of quiet that cures, not the kind that hides. I placed the note and the printout into a clear sleeve, labeled it in neat block letters, and slid it into the folder marked Integrity. The word felt almost theatrical. But sometimes what saves you is saying the true thing out loud, even if only to a drawer. Footsteps overhead. Claire moving. The murmur of plumbing, the gentle complaint of pipes that have learned our grief and register it with a sigh. I stood, stretched, put on Robert's old cardigan the color of early morning. It smelled faintly of cedar and television static, ghosts of ordinary days that had once saved us. I opened the kitchen window an inch. Cold air slipped in, kind and corrective. I let it wash the starch from my lungs. In the glass, my reflection watched me. A woman whose face had become her mother's face. Lines that were not defeat, but maps to places I survived. I told the reflection the truth it needed to hear. You are allowed to fight for the clean air your children breathe. I closed the window, gathered the folder, the photo, the box, carried them to the stairwell. My hand found the banister and gripped it the way a climber grips a rope, not to hold on, but to go higher with intention. Halfway up, I paused. The house hummed, as if acknowledging permission. I could feel the moment gathering like a weather front, pressure changing, the promise of rain. Confrontation is not thunder. It is the steady opening of a door that has been painted shut. I reached the landing, moved toward the guest room, and saw a thin line of light beneath the door. I was ready to knock, to step inside with my proofs as weapons and my truth as shield and say the sentence that would change our surname's future. But before my knuckles found the wood, a sound reached me, soft, private, unguarded. Claire's voice, speaking into her phone, a message being recorded, not for me. "I can't keep it," she whispered. "I'll return the money. I'll tell the truth. I'm sorry." Then a long breath, the kind that empties a person to make space for a new one. "If I lose you, I lose myself." I closed my eyes, let the relief pass through me like a slow bell. Then another sentence, hurried, almost inaudible, as if she feared the room might catch it and tattle. "But please, don't make me choose publicly." The plea hung in the hallway like a delicate garment that would tear if I touched it. My hand hovered at the door. Knock or retreat. Enter with the ledger and be the judge, or wait and be the mother. I lowered my hand, because the inventory wasn't finished. Not yet. There was one more truth I needed to count, the one hidden not in bank memos or drafts of courage, but in the quiet arithmetic of consequence. What happens to a family when love tells the truth out loud? I turned away from the door and let the hall clock claim another minute, one more, then one more still, and one. On the third minute, I knew what I would ask of her, what I would give, what I would no longer accept on behalf of our name. Downstairs, the kitchen light hummed like a faithful witness. I walked back to the table, placed the folder in the center, and rested my palms on either side of it. Morning would need this arrangement, and so would I. The house exhaled, and somewhere deep in the walls, something settled, wood aligning with wood, frame finding its true square, quiet, decisive, unmistakable. Tomorrow, I would ask Claire to stand beside me. Tonight, I would let her find the floor. Morning arrived without permission. The kind that doesn't gently spill into the house. It invades, cutting through curtains, dissolving what darkness had tried to hide. The air was crisp, almost metallic, the sort that makes you inhale a little deeper than you mean to, as if truth had a temperature and the house was adjusting to it. Claire was already awake. I heard her footsteps before I saw her, soft, deliberate, as though each one required a decision. She entered the kitchen wearing yesterday's sweater, her eyes swollen from a night that had clearly offered no rest. The table between us was clean, but not empty. The folder lay at its center, a silent witness. She saw it immediately. Her jaw tightened. "You found more," she said, not as a question, but as an inevitability. "I found enough," I replied. My voice came out quieter than I expected, but steadier too. "Enough to know that truth isn't something we lose. It's something we trade away." She sank into the chair across from me, her hands folded on her lap, like a child waiting for punishment. I poured tea for both of us, the simple ritual creating a rhythm, a small mercy between combatants who loved each other too much to call this a war. "I heard you last night," I said. "The voice note, the—" Her head snapped up, eyes wide, frightened. "I didn't mean to eavesdrop," I continued, "but the walls in this house were built to listen." Color rose to her cheeks. "Then you know I'm going to return the money." "I know you said you would," I answered softly, "but saying it is easier than living with what follows." The steam from the cup curled upward, fragile and alive. I let it rise between us like incense. "Do you know what your father used to say about our name?" I asked. She shook her head, hesitant. "He said it was the only inheritance that couldn't be taxed," I said. "Not the house, not the savings, not the silverware. Just the name. He'd tap his chest and say, 'It lives here.'" I did the same now. It's the one thing you can't sell without losing yourself. Claire's lips trembled. I didn't mean to sell it. I just wanted peace. Peace built on silence, I said, is like painting over mold. It looks better for a season, and then it kills you slowly. Her tears fell fast this time. I thought I was helping him, Mom. He's my brother. Yes, I said, and you are my daughter. And I'm not asking you to stop loving him. I'm asking you to stop protecting him from the consequences that shape adults into honest people. She took a shaky breath. He said you'd turn this into a battle of principles, that you always do. I smiled faintly, not from pride, but from memory. He's not wrong. Principles are the bones under our skin. You can live without a limb, Claire, but not without a spine. She looked down at the folder again. What do you want me to do? I leaned back, studying her face, my daughter's face, my own reflection in younger form. I don't want you to do anything for me. I want you to do something for yourself. Which is? Tell him, I said. Not with anger, not with apology, just with truth. Return the money, tell him why, and make it clear that this family doesn't run on transactions. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. And if he hates me for it? I reached across the table, covering her trembling hands with mine. Then let him. Love without truth is dependency. Love with truth is freedom. You've been trying to carry both, and it's tearing you in half. Her throat tightened as she whispered, You make it sound easy. It isn't, I said. But it's clean. For a long while we sat there, hands linked, two women who had finally stopped pretending that peace was something you could buy in installments. The kettle whistled faintly, the house breathing again after a long-held silence. Then Claire drew in a steady breath. I already sent him a message last night, she confessed. Before I fell asleep. I told him I'd pay him back, that I couldn't keep the money. My heart lifted, just enough to feel something like gratitude, before she added, He hasn't replied. Of course he hadn't. Control doesn't surrender easily. What if he tells everyone, she said suddenly. What if he turns it around, says I betrayed him? I tilted my head. Then let him speak. The truth doesn't crumble when it's spoken against. It sharpens. Her eyes met mine, raw and searching. You've forgiven worse, haven't you? I smiled, small and tired. Forgiveness isn't surrender. It's just truth wearing mercy's coat. She looked at me for a long time, as if memorizing what a woman looks like when she refuses to bend anymore. Then she stood, took a shaky step toward the counter, and picked up her phone. Her fingers hovered, hesitating. I could almost hear her heartbeat, that rhythm of courage that falters before it steadies. Do you want me to stay while you do it? I asked. She shook her head. I think I have to do this alone. Good, I said. That's how truth sounds best. One voice, unaccompanied. She nodded, exhaling through her nose like someone bracing for wind. Then she began typing. The sound of her fingers was soft but certain. When she was done, she placed the phone face down and pressed her palms flat against the counter, grounding herself. What did you say? I asked. That I'm not part of his story anymore, she said. That I love him, but I won't lie for him. And that he can keep his peace. I'll build my own. The room stilled. The words hung there, sacred and solid. I stood and walked toward her, each step measured. When I reached her, I touched her cheek, the same cheek I'd kissed every night before she learned to speak for herself. Her skin was warm, and my voice came out low, almost a prayer. You've just reclaimed your name. She smiled through tears. It doesn't feel like victory. It isn't, I said. It's inheritance. We stood there, mother and daughter, both quiet, both raw. The kind of silence that follows truth, heavy, but healing. Outside, light began to spill through the windows, stronger now, unapologetic. Dust floated in its path, shimmering like forgiveness you could almost touch. Claire turned toward the window, watching the brightness unfold across the floorboards. "I'll send the money back today," she said softly, "and if he calls, I'll answer. But I won't defend the lie." "Good," I whispered. "Let honesty do the defending." She reached for her tea but didn't drink it. The steam had faded, leaving only warmth. "Will you talk to him?" she asked. "I will," I said. "But not today. Today belongs to you." She nodded, her shoulders easing for the first time in days. "It feels strange," she admitted. "Like the house is lighter." "It is," I said, looking around. "Truth removes weight. Lies rearrange it." We both smiled then, a small, shared breath that sounded like grace rediscovering its voice. And yet, as I watched her, a quiet thought pressed at the edge of my mind. She had done the right thing, yes, but the damage Daniel had done ran deeper than money. It touched something older, something inherited, the wound of control, the fear of exposure, the myth that silence keeps love intact. That would need tending too. But not yet. For now, the name was safe. The house was breathing. And my daughter had begun to rebuild herself, not on obedience, but on truth. Still, beneath the calm, I felt a small tremor in my chest, the sense that one final reckoning remained. Daniel's silence was not peace. It was strategy. And I had learned long ago that strategy without conscience always returns to the table. So I waited. I watched the light climb the wall, and quietly I prepared for the next knock. It rained the next morning. A slow, steady rain, not the kind that breaks things, but the kind that heals by persistence. The air smelled like wet earth and rosemary from the garden, a scent I hadn't noticed since Robert planted it years ago. Back then, he said rosemary was for remembrance. Today, it smelled like release. The house was quiet, but not the suffocating kind. A lighter quiet, the kind that breathes. Claire was still asleep in the guest room, her door slightly open, a sign of peace, or maybe an apology she didn't know how to word yet. I didn't close it. Some doors need to stay ajar for a while, until trust learns how to walk back in on its own. I moved through the kitchen slowly, barefoot. The floorboards were cool, honest. They no longer groaned under the weight of secrets. A small part of me wished Robert could have seen this. Not the conflict, but the quiet after it. The kind of quiet that isn't an absence, but a choice. On the table sat the folder I had prepared days ago. I opened it one last time. The printed transfer. The note in Claire's handwriting. "If I speak, I lose my brother. If I stay quiet, I lose my mother." I read it again, this time without pain. Her words had once felt like a verdict. Now they felt like a map, proof that she had found her way through both losses and somehow chosen herself. My phone buzzed, a message from Daniel. I hadn't expected one so soon. The preview line was short. I saw the transfer returned. I opened it fully. "You've turned her against me. I hope you're proud." I took a deep breath, letting the rain outside speak in my place. Then I typed slowly, carefully, "No, Daniel." She turned toward the truth. "You just weren't standing there when she did." I hit send and placed the phone face down. I didn't wait for a reply. Some conversations don't need to echo. They just need to end. The rain thickened. Each drop tapped the window with measured rhythm, like a second heart. I brewed tea, 1 cup this time, and sat near the window, watching the garden blur behind its curtain of water. The rosemary bent, but didn't break. I thought about all the things that bend without breaking: forgiveness, faith, motherhood, even the truth when it's handled with care. The light shifted. A pale stripe crossed the table and landed on the folder. For a moment, it looked like the house itself was acknowledging the work done, like light had come to collect its share of the truth. Claire appeared in the doorway, wrapped in a blanket, her hair messy, her eyes softer. "You're up early," she said, her voice still wrapped in sleep. I never really slept, I admitted. Old habits. She came closer, standing behind me, following my gaze out the window. It's beautiful, she murmured, even with the rain. Especially with the rain, I corrected gently. That's when the ground learns how to forgive itself. She smiled faintly and placed a folded envelope on the table. This is for you, she said. I looked at it, plain, white, with my name in her handwriting. What is it? A receipt, she said, and when she saw my raised brow, she added, for the money I sent back, proof it's gone. I exhaled. Not relief exactly, but something close. Keep it, I said. You don't owe me documentation. I do, she said, almost stubbornly, because you taught me that the truth doesn't need to hide. I want it written somewhere that I made it right. Her voice didn't waver. It carried the calm of someone who had crossed a bridge and no longer feared looking down. I reached for her hand, squeezing it lightly. You made it right the moment you chose the truth over comfort. She sat beside me, her head resting lightly on my shoulder. We watched the rain together, two women who had survived their own storms and now shared the quiet aftermath. I dreamed of Dad last night, she whispered. He was sitting in the garden, fixing that old birdhouse. He didn't say anything, just looked up and smiled. I smiled too, the ache in my chest both tender and familiar. He used to say the birds always returned when the air felt honest. Claire laughed softly. Then maybe they'll come back today. Maybe, I said. The house feels ready. We stayed like that for a while, not talking, not needing to. The rain began to slow, the clouds thinning into pale silver. Light grew stronger, braver. It slipped across the floor, touched the chairs, the walls, the kettle, even the photograph of Robert on the shelf. The kind of light that doesn't ask permission, it simply enters. Claire stood and crossed to the window, unlatching it. The hinges creaked softly as she pushed it open. Cool air swept in, bringing the smell of rain-soaked soil and the faint sweetness of rosemary. The sound of distant birds reached us, hesitant at first, then clearer, freer. She turned to me, eyes bright. You said once that peace has bricks of truth, she said. I think I finally understand what that means. I smiled. Then help me build the rest. She nodded, her smile trembling but true. I will. The rain stopped completely. The world outside glistened, washed, not wounded. Claire leaned on the window frame, breathing in the clean air. For the first time in what felt like years, she looked light. Not because her pain was gone, but because she'd learned how to carry it with honesty. I watched her, my daughter, the woman she was becoming, shaped not by obedience, but by choice. I realized then that peace isn't inherited. It's constructed, one truth at a time. I rose from my chair and joined her at the window. Together, we watched the sky open, pale blue pushing through gray. The smell of new beginnings drifted in, cool and forgiving. You know, I said, half to her, half to the air. Your father once told me that peace was like a house. You can't just buy it. You have to build it with your own hands. She turned, smiling. Then maybe it's time we rebuilt ours. I nodded, feeling the truth settle like sunlight on the floorboards. From the foundation up, I said. We stood there as the wind moved through the open space, stirring the curtains. The sound was soft, almost like breathing. The house, for the first time in a long while, felt alive. Outside, a small bird landed on the rosemary bush, a fragile silhouette against the light. It shook its wings, then began to sing. I closed my eyes, listening. Peace had returned, not bought, not borrowed, but built. And this time it would stay. I keep thinking about what happened today, how I thought keeping quiet would protect us, when really it only protected the lie. I've learned that peace without truth is just silence dressed up as safety. And now that I've broken that silence, there's no going back. But tell me, What did you think of today's story? If you were in my place, would you have stayed silent or spoken the truth, no matter who it hurt? Share your thoughts below. I want to know. And make sure you're following, because next time, I'll find out something I was never meant to see. My husband's partner had another contract, and this time, his signature wasn't the only thing forged.